Okay, right now we're going to do some little exercises and little hints as to how to get into some single string picking. One exercise is just to do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You can't go wrong with that one. And within. That's a G chord. We're playing in G, by the way. And you go to a G9. C7. Back to the G. To the D. C. To the G again. That's a country and western influence in me. Coming up, I listened to a lot of country and western tunes, and I could not help
Hey, welcome back to another Touch Designer tutorial.
So I got
so excited to finally get to launch this free open source plugin for Touch Designer that allows us to run Google's mediapipe machine learning models with no
I sound the way I
installation, and
sound,
it's
or
all
I
GPU
do what I do,
accelerated.
or play
It's
what I
going to
play.
run on any computer.
Kind of mix it all
So
up
this
together.
actually gives us
In fact,
access
it's
to
not too much difference between the
real-time
blues
machine
and the
learning
country and
models
western,
like
really.
face tracking that can be mapped onto different 3D models. It gives us access to hand tracking, pose tracking, object tracking, multi-person face detection, image classification, as well as image segmentation. For this project, I teamed up with Dom Scott, who's based out of Toronto, and the two of us have been working nonstop to try and get this plugin working for the touch designer community. So we're really excited to see what you'll make, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Dom Scott. I'm a visual artist in Toronto, and I specialize in interactive light and video installations. So I've been super excited to implement mediapipe into Touch Designer and see what fun tools it gives us to play with and what creative things people come up with.
This project started off as just a single body tracking component, and it wouldn't be anything close to what it is today without Dom's help. So that's been such a fun collaboration, and I just want to give a huge, huge shout out to Dom for all the work that they've done on this project. And if you want to support them, I think the best way to do that, I'm going to put a link to their website in the description. Go check out their work. They're doing great stuff. For this next part, I'm going to show you how to get the project up and running. So we're going to head on over to the GitHub. I'm going to put a link to this URL in the description, as well as a link up above. So once you land on the website, we actually have a lot of info down here, kind of diving into the setup for the project, information on all the individual plugins, as well as how to feed your own video device into the component, and also information on how we develop the plugin itself. So if you wanted to contribute to it in some way, we have documentation there. A quick way to support the project is to just give it a star on GitHub. If you run into any issues with the component, you can go to the Issues tab over here, and you can actually file a new issue and make sure to include things like screenshots of what's happening in your project. Please list the operating system that you're running, the version of the operating system, as well as the version of Touch Designer that you're running. That can be super, super helpful. So you can put in a title, comments, you can drag and drop images into it as well, and that will help us improve this over time. But to actually just use the plugin, head on over to this release section over here, and the version will continue to change. We're going to continue to add new updates to this as mediapipe adds new features to their machine learning models. And if you click here, there is a button that says release.zip. You're going to want to click on that. Make sure that you're not downloading the full source code. It's not actually going to work out of the box if you download the entire zip of the source code, because that contains the development environment that we use to create the actual plugins. So go ahead and click on this release zip. It'll go ahead and download, and then you can unzip it, and you'll get these individual toxes that if you wanted, you could actually just drag into your projects. And we did a huge push to actually take the different machine learning models and embed them into the Touch Designer components. So the main one here is actually this mediapipe tox. This houses all the machine learning models. So you'll see it's quite big, but this actually means that the entire project is going to work offline. You can go ahead and open up the project. So the main part of this project is this mediapipe component. And this is actually the component responsible for running the different machine learning models. So if you click on it and go over to the parameters page, you'll see that you have options to toggle on and off the different machine learning models, as well as display the different overlays of those models. This is actually just outputting the raw data. And each one of these components over here are examples that we've created that show how to basically take that data and then use it within Touch Designer. And these also have some nice helpers that we've included to just make the process really, really easy to start using that data in Touch Designer. The first thing I want to start off with is just showing you how to hook up the component. So when you open up the project, you can select your webcam from over here. And if it doesn't load by default, you can always hit this little reset button. And this will restart the machine learning models and all of the underlying systems. You will most likely not need to change these. Under the hood, this is actually running as a website, but everything is stored internally. And so these are some of the different parameters that tell the network where to look. Below are all of the different toggles for turning the different models on and off. So I wouldn't recommend running all of them at the same time. Depending on the system that you have, it might be able to handle it, but I'd recommend, only running a couple. And then you also have the ability to show the different overlays here. So this can be helpful for kind of debugging in this side of things before it gets rendered into Touch Designer. Along the top here, you have access to all the different custom settings within each one of the machine learning models. So for every toggle over here, we have different customization. So for example, you can change the different settings available for the image classification, the image segmentation, all those different things. Let's go ahead and dive into the components. I'm going to show you how to work with the different machine learning models within Touch Designer. For this next part, Dom's actually going to walk you through the setup for the face tracking components.
So let's take a look at facial landmarks. There are a number of bits of data that come out of the mediapipe model that you can play with. So I'm going to give you a very quick overview of what's there. So first things first, you want detect facial landmarks turned on. I would say probably not the overlays, but it's useful when you're getting started to make sure it's working. If you take a look in the settings up here for facial landmarks, at the moment it's set to 2, and you might notice it's a tiny bit jittery on my face. If you drop this down to 1, the component will reload, but then you should get much smoother tracking on the face when it does come back together again. In general, for all of the things in mediapipe, try and keep them as minimal as you need, because everything you add will add extra CPU and GPU processing time. So let's, now you can see the face is a little smoother. The face tracking component here takes the JSON that comes from mediapipe and just turns it into useful things. So you need this to start with, and you can check that it's working with the mask up here. Then there are a number of things that come out. So the top on top is this overlay here, which you can see already. We then have a blend shapes chop, which is 54 channels of things you can use to animate the face or to check what the face is doing. We'll go into more about that in a moment. We have the facial points, so this is all 258, I think, of these dots all in a chop, so you can take the coordinate information to do things with. We then have a SOP for each of the masks themselves, the actual thing that it's tracking on your face. We have these things called transformation matrices, and we have one for each of the faces as well. So what do all of these things do? If we go take a look inside the face filter example, we're implementing all of them to give you an example of what goes on. Let's start with the SOPs, because they're fairly obvious. As you can see, it's the face here moving away. We have it rendered through a geometry and a camera, just like any other SOP. And then we have an example here that uses one element of the transformation matrix, which is the rotation. So we're using that to make the texture that's on your face move in time with your head rotation. So if you take a look here, the texture moves and rotates at the same time as your face does. So that's the first thing, the SOPs, and what you can do with those. This is the facial blend shapes, and you can see all these moving around here. So the couple of interesting ones in here could be eye blink, so you can check whether people's eyes are open or how open.
Why is this shit so fucking slow, bro?
And some other ones in there as well about whether your cheeks are moving and other fun things. So in this scenario, we have jaws open, closed.
Okay.
So when you do a goldfish, it changes the intensity of the texture there as well. So that's some of the examples of what you can do. If you wanted to build a puppet face, you can do that. Great thing for the blend shapes is either look at the chop channels that are here to see what they do, or you can go look on the mediapipe website and see the documentation about what they are. The next area we're going to look at is the transformation matrix. So the idea with the transformation matrix is that you can use this canonical face model as a reference point and put a piece of other geometry, a 3D object of any kind, in the same place as the canonical face model. And as long as those two line up, you can apply the transformation matrix, and in real time, it will move them so that they line up with your face. So you can see the rendered result I've got here of this little halo ring, and then we can see that it moves in time with your face. So that's pretty good fun. And that is a quick overview of the facial landmark tracking.
Let's go ahead and take a look at the hand tracking next. So I'm going to go over to the mediapipe component, turn off the other models, and then just turn on detect hands. The hand detection actually has the ability to pick the total number of hands that can be tracked in real time. So there's also a confidence threshold. And what that allows the machine learning model to do, if it's not confident
What the
enough
final
that
knowledge?
the hand is detected in the frame, it just won't render it. It won't output that data. If you kind of have like a hand popping in the background, you might want to change these thresholds here. You can also change the number of gestures that are being output. So for example, if you only want to just track for a single hand, you could change this to 1. That would also free up some resources. Similarly, for the total number of hands, if you only want to track one hand, you do that as well. And I just want to point out the different outputs here. So the first one, this is actually going to render the different points. The next one, this will give you all the different information about your left and right hands. So you see we have all the different digits, and they're separated by H1 and H2. So for example, if we wanted to get your right pointer finger as a data point, we could connect a select chop, and then we can filter this down in the channel names by getting H1 for hand 1, colon, index finger, underscore tip, star. And so the star is going to give us access to any of the coordinates that are available for it. And what's really cool is that we get the X, Y, and Z data, and it's super, super accurate. Yeah, so then you could kind of do whatever you like with this specific data. The X, Y positions are normalized from 0 to 1. So the next one over here is all of the different hand data, but organized in a format that's really easy to instance with. So if I place down a circle, stop, for example, I'm going to right-click on the end here and place down a geometry. And maybe we're going to take the radius of this circle and make it much, much smaller. And then from there, what we could do is we could go over to the instance section on the geo, turn it on, and we can drag and drop this chop on. And we can get the X, the Y, and the Z data. And now this geometry should, if we place a camera and a render top, and also add in a material, maybe just a constant material for now. I'm going to drag and drop this onto the geometry to give it some lighting. And I'm going to take the radius of this, maybe make it 0.01, 0.05. And you can see we get this little sphere here in the center. But now when we put our hands in, we get all that rendered information. Awesome. The next one down is actually some helper data that I've used in a lot of different projects. And so generally, if you're making an installation, it can be really helpful to get the overall motion of someone's hand or arm. And so what I've done here is this isn't the genuine velocity, but it's helpful to think about that way. This will capture the overall motion of someone's hand movement and map it into a range that's helpful to apply to different visuals or audio. So you can see we can get that velocity for our left hand, for our right hand, and then we also have the distance between our hands. Next up is our gesture data. You can see here we have peace sign for victory for our hand 1, we have thumbs up, thumbs down, pointing up, open palm, closed fist, and then I love you. And then also a recognizer for none, but also if your hand's out of the frame, it detects nothing. And it does it for both hands, which is huge. And then the last part over here is a SOP that will render the actual hand data, and then we split these into left and right hand, so that way you can have a unique piece of geometry for each. Next up, I want to look at the pose tracking. So I'm going to go over to the model, turn on detect poses. One thing to note too is that you can use different models. So if you go over to the pose section, you can see here that there's a light, full, and heavy model that you can use. So if I increase this to heavy, it uses a larger machine learning model, which is going to take more compute power. The other part too is that there's these min and max confidence thresholds. So if it thinks that you're not in the frame, the machine learning model needs to have a certain confidence level to think that it's actually seeing a person there, you can change this confidence level depending on how responsive it is. And you can see the first parameter here, we get our rendered top. The next parameter is all of our joint data. So what's really great is that this model actually works with the X, Y, and Z position. So you can kind of see if I put my hand off in the distance here, or further away from the camera. I'd say this model is quite jittery. I think that the mediapipe team is working on an update for this. I have another project in my Patreon that uses a different machine learning model. It's using MoveNet, and I think that model is a lot more stable. So if you do want to have very accurate pose detection, I'd recommend using that for now. The Is again set up. So then the last section, this is similar to the hand tracking where we can get the velocity of your left wrist, your right wrist, as well as the distance between your hands. One thing that I would recommend doing, because this data is very jumpy, it can be really helpful to place down a filter. And you can see here, just even looking at how this data is moving around, it really smooths things out quite a bit. And if you happen to be using the actual rendered output here, and let me show you what that looks like inside the component as well. So here, I'll open this up so that we can view it. I think all the way back here to the far left, I will insert
Speaking of picking, one tune in particular has a lot of interesting things on a solo. It's Honky Tonk. The gentleman that played the solo was Mr. Billy Butler, and we're just going to do some of Honky Tonk for you. Stop that right now. You can make that change, the second change down rather than up here, but it just sounds better to me sliding up here as opposed to. So my way is. horn comes in then, okay? But those licks were just, again, some of the double stops, but it was just a perfect solo for that tune at the time, Mr. Billy Butler. There's not a lot of bending involved in that particular one. He wasn't a bender. He played straight notes, beautiful chords. Right now we're going to talk about some string bending and finding the right note. I think that's how it was even invented. ending, it really leans toward the blues, I feel, as opposed to the straight playing the note. Like, for instance, no, not a good example. For instance, okay, we're going to still deal with some more rhythms and some little feels and doodads in between as we do our rhythms. We're still dealing with some picking and little rhythms and doing feels in between your pickings. For instance, you always base your rhythm accordingly to the other players in the band, especially the bass player and the drummer. You got to keep your eyes open and your ears at all times and paying attention to what they're playing and never dwindle too far from home base, you might say. Keeping the song in mind while you're taking your solos and whatnot, and not to step on the other people's feet, in a sense. So you just, if you get a tempo and a good rhythm, just basically listen.